Welcome back to the second half of the 2023 Norfund Conference. We hope you got to stretch your legs a little bit and get some refreshments, but now, on with the show.
Our next session will take us to some of the world's most challenging investment markets and touch on how Norfund makes solid investments in fragile states. Please welcome to the stage Bernd Brunn, Vice President of Norfund's Funds Department.
Thank you, Donald and Lida. It's a pleasure to be up here. We are doing a lot of investments in difficult markets already. What I'm going to talk about together with panelists is investments in the most challenging markets we operate in. And to help me talking about that, I would like you to help me welcoming Judy Kenyani and Saud Aoud up on the stage. So, Saud, first, you're the co-founder and CIO of 54 Capital, and also the chair of Samanu. Yeah. And Judy, you're the investment director here at Norfund in the Financial Inclusion Department. I'm going to start with a few questions for you, Saud. Take us through the story. You were born and raised in Morocco, you studied in France, you have worked in London, and all of a sudden you're investing in Ethiopia. How did this come about?
So thank you very much for, it's an honor to be with you here. So yes, born in Morocco, but Morocco is a country that is so close to Europe, 8 miles, and at the same time in Africa. So it was natural for me to, at some point in my career, to come back to Africa. So I started by looking at different regions in Africa, and then came a trip to Addis Ababa and to Ethiopia, where I realized that there was a huge opportunity in the country due to the lack of manufacturing capabilities or capacities from actually the agriculture to the service. So I just set a flag there. And I stayed, and we are very focused on Ethiopia today. Was not the purpose, the first intention at the beginning, but with the experience in the country, we remain focused given the extent of the work that needs to be done there in our portfolio.
You told me a little bit earlier on that the first couple of years weren't plain sailing. Tell us a bit about that.
So, I mean, the first years in Ethiopia in 2013-14 was one of the few African countries that was growing at 10%. So all the headlines were about how unbelievable the growth in Ethiopia was, one of the highest in the globe. And that was so an easy to get a meeting with the high net worth individuals, private capital, family offices to discuss about Ethiopia. They were intrigued by the story. Then seeing the passionate team we have, seeing the understanding of the market, made us actually got a lot of private capital investment. The story got a bit more difficult, more challenging over the past few years with the revolts of in one of the region in Ethiopia, Oromia region, and then which then led to the Tigray war more recently. So now the news moved from double-digit growth to the war of Tigray in all the press. So it was difficult to get that first meeting that we had initially. So that's the big difference. I was talking to one of your colleagues earlier today about the transformation of investment following visits in our factories. It's close to 100%. So once we attract investors into seeing our facilities and our team, the closing that deal goes to almost 100%. So that's so it's more difficult today, but at the same time hopeful.
I'm going to turn the attention to Judy a little bit. So Judy is my dear colleague, and we have worked together on, among other things, fragile states over the last almost a year now, I suppose. And quite recently, Norfund completed an investment in DRC, in a bank in DRC, in CRDB. So please, Judy, can't you tell us about how this came about?
Thank you, Bernd. It's a pleasure to be here. So it's been a 3.5-year journey from the point of first contact until the banking license being issued. The journey started even before. For the last 10 years, Norfund has been trying to partner with CRDB, which is the largest bank in Tanzania, in order to fund their operations in that country. But that would have been the easy transaction. In November 2019, the bank called me requesting that we consider investing in a new bank that they were going to open in Lubumbashi, which is the second largest city in the southeastern part of DRC. I quickly relayed this information to Eric Sanderson, who is the head of our financial inclusions team and happened to be with me in Nairobi at that time. We were sitting in a coffee shop in between meetings. He thought about it for a short while and he said, you know what, go for it. But it wasn't that easy. There were many hurdles along the way. The reason why the transaction was attractive for Norfund is because CRDB were actually following their customers into DRC. So they had a group of 55 SMEs and about 50 corporate companies that were already doing business across the two countries. The many hurdles started early in 2020. We had to put the transaction on hold because of COVID as we assessed the uncertainties about the pandemic. But we kept talking to CRDB because it was important that we establish rapport and build our trust that would be important in the partnership coming. In July of 2020, we picked up the discussions. And because DRC is not a strategy country for Norfund, we felt that it was important to, in this early stage, present the case to our management committee to start getting their feedback and thoughts around whether this would be a transaction that Norfund could consider. During that meeting, I remember distinctly one of the management team members, and I won't name names or point fingers, Ilva, she already raised the issue of child labor in mines within DRC, and particularly in Lubumbashi, in this town where the bank was going to be established. So we knew very early in the process that there are many big issues that we were going to tackle throughout the transaction process. Another key challenge was because it was during the pandemic, we largely had to work on the transaction remotely because of travel restrictions at that time. Also, it was important to find credible consultants, advisors, and lawyers to assist us throughout the process. And this was also difficult in this country. As we went through the process, we got the internal approvals completed, and we completed the legal documentation of the transaction. What was unique about working in DRC is we had to disburse the capital to a bank account in DRC even before the banking license had been issued.
Can I ask you, Judy, so count the years for me, or the
Yes.
time, from you first started to talk about this deal until the money was in the bank account in DRC?
So that took about 2 years.
Okay.
And it's taken another close to a year and a half to finally get the banking license, which only happened last month. And now we are looking forward to starting the bank operations later in June.
Mm-hmm. And you did tell me that there was a slight hiccup at the final stages there. We had originally committed to, or signaled that we wanted to invest what amount, and what happened?
Yes, good point. So we initially invested $6.75 million. And after we disbursed the funds, the bank had applied for the license from the central bank in Congo. And just in January of this year, we get a letter from the central bank saying, you know what, we've increased the minimum capital requirements in DRC, and you, the investors, need to invest even more money before the license had been issued. But I think this speaks to the fact that when it rains, Norfund provides the umbrella, we don't take it away. So we quickly put our proposal together, and within 2 weeks, we had gone back to our investment committee, we had gotten the necessary approvals, and in another 2 weeks, we had completed the legal documentation and disbursed the funds. I think this also speaks to the fact that as Norfund, we are agile, we are flexible, and we can be quick in making decisions in such situations, because in fragile states, anything can happen and things change very quickly.
So clearly it's not very easy always, and regulatory challenges is a part of the journey. Is this something you can recognize, Saad?
Oh, yes. I mean, very often, and that's why, when we talk about fragile state, I think it's more fragile economies than fragile state, because this state is omnipresent. The state is always there. Regulatory changes come every 3-4 months. You have some changes that affect your plans. So the key, and that's something that in the teams we keep in our minds all the time, the vision should stay the same. We want to be the largest FMCG group in the country. The strategy for that is vertical integration. But then the tactics of the strategy have to evolve with the regulatory changes. The last one is the wheat. So the government announcing that they are finally producing enough wheat for the population, and therefore they need to export. So they ask us to actually to buy the wheat at a certain price and provide some of it to the government back at 40% discount to the price at which we buy. That's a regulatory change that change your pricing, your strategy on what products you sell to the market, etc., etc. So those are big hurdles but you have to be flexible in your approach. The tactics, strategy stays the same, vision stays the same, but the tactics have to evolve, and the same way Norfund is flexible and agile. We have to be also as agile as Norfund on dealing with these operational issues.
Okay, so I forgot to mention that you're in the business of fast-moving consumer goods and primarily edible oils. That's the most important product.
Yes.
And then you also pointed out that vertical integration, or owning the supply chain, is a part of the strategy. Is that particularly important in countries like Ethiopia, you think? Is that something that wouldn't be necessary in, like say, Kenya or maybe Norway?
So, Ethiopia has a population of 120 million people. Very low, despite being the Tower of Africa when it comes to water, despite having, I think, 37 million hectares of arable land, yet the productivity of agricultural production compared to the size of the population is very low. As a result of that, you don't have enough raw material for the industries, and you don't have enough exports. I think Ethiopia today has one of the lowest export per capita in dollar terms in the world. I think it's only together with North Korea and Somalia and Eritrea, so really last in class. So it's very difficult to find foreign currency. And because you cannot find foreign currency available in the banking system, you have to go to traders to bring you, who also have difficulties in getting that economically because they export at losses. So what you need to do is to work with the farmers, give them the tools to give you the raw materials rather than trying to find. And then try to use that raw material both for local consumption, but also for export of value-add products. So today, when I say Ethiopia, everyone thinks of coffee, but yet 95 or 96% of the coffee is exported raw at a loss for those that export it. Very few go to specialty coffee that is at a profit, or roast that coffee for the global market. So that's what is our focus, is to add value as much as we can on the local raw materials available and help producing that raw materials through cluster And some examples have been, some sectors have been successful in Ethiopia. The malt, for example, to support the breweries over the last decade. And then before that decade, the flower cut development with clusters in flowers.
So basically, you don't only have one job. You have to know how to produce the raw material that produces the crude oil, and then to refine the crude oil to edible oil. And I don't know your business, but distribution, I imagine. Many more things that maybe a more specialized operator in Norway or the UK or even in Kenya would need to do. So operating in these countries is even more complicated, it sounds.
Yeah. That's why it's always done in stages. The first stage was to establish the brands, our distribution system, then our manufacturing capabilities with certification, EHS compliant, IFC standards, etc. The teams, the drive of the teams. Then now the second step with the Norfund investment is to build the equipment, to build the factory that will take the seeds and transform them into crude oil, the solvent extraction plant, and then focus on the backward integration journey. Initially, we will buy from traders, the raw material that were otherwise exported. But then the 5-year journey will have to go to the farmers, build clusters around them, warehouses, financing them, providing fertilizer, providing them the quality seeds to increase the yield. The impact will be hopefully huge because if they produce a ton per hectare per year on one oilseed, that means an income of $800 to $1,000 per year. By assisting them, financing them, giving them the right fertilizer, giving them the right tools, they can increase that to 2.5, 3 tons, so doubling their income in a country where 80% of the population are farmers. So that could be very impactful.
Understood. Back to you, Judy. So, DRC, I guess that has a special sound in the ears of Norwegians. There was a pretty publicized court case a few years ago that I'm sure most Norwegians know about anyways. So it's not, it doesn't have the image of the most regulated economy in the world. Investing in the southeast part of the country where there is a lot of mining, you could suspect that maybe some child labor is involved here. You know, can you maybe explain a little bit what kind of loans this bank is going to extend, and also how you're dealing with these issues that is probably very important in that part of the country and the world?
Okay. First, it's important to remember that CRDB initially are following their customers into DRC. So they're starting with a known customer base as they learn the country, as they learn the dynamics of working in this new economy. What's also important is the reason they chose this particular town and this area of DRC is because it's the second commercial hub in DRC, and it's an area that shares a culture and language with Tanzania. So we hope that the Congolese would be more receptive on that side of accepting a Tanzanian bank there. Yes, we are aware and very alive to the issues around mining because this is a mining city, but CRDB are not going to focus on supporting the large mining companies. Rather, they're going to focus on supporting SMEs that work within the mining value chain. And these are traders, transporters, warehouse companies, suppliers of building materials, and so on and so forth. So their focus is SMEs, which is also the focus of Norfund. Initially, they're going in with a big digital strategy and also a strategy on agency banking. And this is because they want to leapfrog growth in DRC. It's a difficult market. CRDB has been successful as being the digital lender in Tanzania and also a lender in agency banking. And what this means, it will increase access of financial services to the SMEs in DRC through mobile phones. And also the agency banking brings the bank closer to the customers instead of having the customers go directly to the bank. And when these agencies are established within and outside the town of Lubumbashi, the customers will be able to go directly to the agency, do some banking transactions like deposits, withdrawals, checking balances, paying for utilities without having to move to the branch. And we think this is a solid value proposition that CRDB is providing. Now, to deal with the many risks of working in this country, in addition to the capital that we have invested, we are also going to support CRDB with what we call business support or technical assistance. And we are doing this alongside IFU because we have co-invested with the Danish DFI for a similar amount. And the business support that we are giving them is to put in place a solid environmental and social risk management system within the bank to help CRDB assess the risks that come with working in this difficult market, to assess, monitor, and manage those risks for as long as they will operate in this country.
I can only imagine that maybe some of those investees are not jumping up and down in joy looking at this list of demands that they need to abide by. How confident are you that they're going to be able to live up to those demands?
Yeah, we are confident because CRDB has already implemented this environmental and social risk management system in Tanzania. And we will work together with them in partnership to do the same in DRC, which is an even more challenging market. And we are going to fund part of the process, which again speaks to the fact that this is a partnership, that we don't just provide the capital and wait for success and wait for things to happen, but we actually get our hands dirty. We sit on the board and we help to strengthen the areas where the bank needs us the most.
I also wanted to touch upon a theme that is about enforceability of contracts. It's difficult to do business if you can't guarantee that what the other people are going to provide is actually going to happen. And many of these countries, you know, the law system, the legal system isn't what it is in Europe. So how are you able, I'm turning to you now, Saad, you know, how are you able to navigate that? What is your thinking around that?
I think in Ethiopia, you have to avoid going to court as much as you can, because it's a lengthy process. Execution is impossible. Takes maybe 5 years just for a bounce check. So you have really to make sure that you have all your risk management system, all what you do has to be guaranteed in a sense by something that is important to your counterparty. I mean, the scale of operation helps with some of the suppliers. They don't want to lose you as a customer, so that's the number one point. Then the second point is to have guarantees based on assets they own when they are, for example, your distributors and you give them a lot of products and they have to pay you after 1 week. You have the check, it's not enough because it takes time to enforce it, but you have an asset of theirs that is as a collateral, for example. So those are, you have to always assume that there will be a problem and it will not be easy to challenge it in court. And all your system has to be designed like that. Second part is what we discussed. You have to own, that's why you go to backward and forward integration, is to own most of the value chain so that actually you take less risks than in a normal. So here we hear a lot, let's focus on the core business, and there you have to extend that core business to mitigate that risk.
And Judy, lending money to quite small businesses, mom and pop shops, how can one ensure repayment?
Yeah, so I think for us, by working with and through an intermediary like CRDB, who, number one, has been successful in Tanzania, and 9 years ago, they expanded to Burundi, a much smaller country, also French-speaking, and sort of became the pilot of expanding into DRC, and have also been successful in that small country. So we're going to rely on the systems and processes, the people, because we invest in people, the management that are going to run the business in DRC. Initially, they're going to start with the core management coming from the main bank in Tanzania because they want to transfer that knowledge to DRC, and eventually, and they have hired some local Congolese, and eventually they will train them on the ways of doing business as CRDB, and the bank will be run by the Congolese. But this is not without challenges. These are not perfect markets. If it was a perfect market, we wouldn't invest. But we make sure that our funds have been protected, and that also eventually we will be able to exit from this market. As Telef mentioned earlier, it's important that we circulate and recycle our funds. So we don't invest forever. We invest over a 7 to 10 year horizon. During that period, we work with the companies, with the investees to grow them and strengthen them up to the point where they don't need us anymore. And at that time, we have to be able to exit. In markets like DRC, investors are reluctant to invest just simply because of the risks, both real or perceived. So in this example, we will exit through selling our shares back to CRDB because that was the only viable option. But it's important for us to be able to grow businesses successfully and eventually recycle the funds to the next CRDB that needs us.
Would a private profit-seeking investor make this investment?
No. A resounding no. Because I think from this discussion, as you can tell, it takes patient capital to grow these types of businesses. It's already been a 3.5 year journey just to get the banking license. It's going to take another 3 years once the bank is up and running for the bank to break even and even start making a profit. Within that period, as I mentioned, we're getting our hands dirty. We sit on the board, we put together structures and systems and management in place for the success of this business, and we are not even earning a dividend. But we expect that at the point when we are ready to exit, we will have grown the company where we can realize gains on the initial investment. So if you're just looking for a profit in countries like DRC, this is not for you.
All right, time is running. We need to wind up. There are a few main takeaways here, I feel. First and foremost, clearly it's not the easiest thing you can do to invest in these countries and make larger investments happen. It seems to me it requires a special type of investor, one with tenacity and one with patience, but also not a naive one. One who is very understanding of the risks involved. And also, it seems like you both have demonstrated that it's possible, even though it's challenging. So with those parting words, I would like you to help me in showing gratitude to the two panelists, Judy and Assad. Thank you so much.